Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com and Tar Heel Illustrated on YouTube. This is THI publisher Andrew Jones, and it's time for our next installment of our Class of 2021 Basketball Recruiting Snapshot Series. And the only person we can talk to about that is the guy who's actually doing the series, our very own Clint Jackson, THI's Director of Basketball Recruiting. And Clint, we already featured Kennedy Chandler, and just to let people know who are not familiar with the series that we're doing, Clint's running a written piece on a kid who is either offered or we believe will be a target of North Carolina's this summer. And then the next day we run a podcast. So today we're looking at Trevor Keels. And Trevor Keels, we had the written piece yesterday. So today we're running the Trevor Keels podcast. I know he's a guy that Clint likes. He's from my neck of the woods up in Northern Virginia, Paul Six High School, which is a rival of the school that I went to up there in beautiful Fairfax, Virginia. So, Clint, let everybody know what your thoughts about Trevor Keels.
He is a terrific basketball player, and he's one of those guys that you may watch on YouTube with the highlight videos that are so popular these days. And it may not because he won't have a ton of high-flying dunks and crazy athletic plays, but he's about as fundamentally sound, savvy, and just the skill level is just so high. 6'5" wing. He's well over 200 pounds. He's very strong, very fundamentally sound, and just one of the best pure basketball players in the junior class.
I should say my former neck of the woods. I'm not doing this from Northern Virginia. That's where I grew up, though. The number 3 player at his position, I think, nationally. What is dynamic about him that kind of jumps off the charts when you watch him play that makes him one of the top 15, 20 kids in the nation overall?
It's versatility. I think it's versatility as a guy who can play the 2, the 3, maybe even a 4 if you want to spread the floor. He's going to be a guy that can really shoot the ball. He's a strong ball handler, and again, his body is physically stronger than most kids in the class. Most of these guys his age at 6'5" are about $180, $190. And this is a guy who's well over 200 pounds, probably somewhere in that 215, 230 range. Maybe not 230. He got mad at me last time when I asked him if he was 240. So he tends to say he's more around 215, but just a well put together kid. Big, broad shoulders, strong legs. He's, almost kind of cut from that Paul Pierce sort of body type.
Some young kids that are a little bit thicker than others don't yet know how to use their bodies when they're his age. They can become plotters, or they get a lot of offensive fouls. They just aren't very polished. Some kids already know how to use their bodies to their advantage. Where does Trevor Keels kind of fit in that description?
Definitely falls on the latter. Is a kid who can get his body into you. He actually goes by people. Most people think that you look at him and just say, okay, he's a power wing, and he does play with power. But he goes by people, and a lot of times he's untouched going to the rim. So he can put it on the floor and get by you. And I think most people just assume because of his stature that he's got to, get into you and throw his shoulders into you to draw the foul. But he goes by a lot of people. He's very slick with his handle.
One question we're asking about every kid in this series, Clint, is my favorite question, and that's what is something about Trevor Keels that would surprise people that you take from his game that even folks that have watched him a lot may not pick out, but you've seen and you kind of really like about his game?
Yeah, great question. Actually, one of my favorite questions. I talked with his coach. His coach and I are close, Glenn Farello at Paul Six, and I actually talked to his coach last night. And one of the things that he likes most about him, I can say from my experience, and I've seen the kid play about 4 times, but Coach Farello's seen him play more than anybody, and I always respect the opinion of somebody who has more knowledge on a kid than me. And Coach Farello says it's his IQ. He says his IQ is off the charts. He makes the right play. He's not a guy, he'll score you a lot of points, but he's not a guy that's really worried about what his stat line looks like at the end. So his IQ and just making winning plays. I mean, Paul Six won the state championship this year. I was there for that. And he's just a guy that's just going to make your team better. He plays very well in the system, but he's a weapon. Don't mistake that. But I think it's his IQ to answer your question.
Well, looking down the road, let's say for the sake of discussion, he becomes a Tar Heel. How does he fit in with the way the Tar Heels play?
If the Tar Heels were fortunate enough, to win this recruitment, they're going to get a guy who can fill it up from the outside. They're going to get a guy who can be used in space for isolations. They're going to get a guy who's going to be strong on the boards. They're going to get a guy who's a team player. So, he's not built anything like a Danny Green. He, very different, but he can sort of play that role where he can be that glue guy and be that guy who can knock down shots, and, you can't cheat off of him. And you have to respect where he's at all times. And he's a tough matchup. So I think that, he is a guy that will be that 2-3, and he'll be a solid fundamental player. He is an NBA player. I don't know how many years he would be in college. Some of the things he's working on, getting more consistent on his defense, being more consistent on the boards. He has tendency to dominate in short spurts. And when I heard that feedback from Coach Farello, to me that speaks of just being in really good cardiovascular shape. When people tend to dominate in short spurts and then they maybe get a little less dominant for times, a lot of times that's stamina, and that could be what it is, just kind of improving that stamina.
So what's the pulse here with Carolina?
I think they're in the conversation. I think they got to get him on a visit. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're the leader. He is intrigued by them. When I talked to him in person at the state championship, one of the first schools out of his mouth, but there's schools like Virginia and Villanova and Duke and Georgetown and Ohio State. They're also in really strong with him. So I think he's looking for the right fit. Carolina tends to play fast. Paul Six tends to play fast, but they also operate in a very good half-court offense. Farello is a great coach, and so no matter what another team throws at him, he's got an answer. A lot of talent on that team. I think he's going to be probably better off to go somewhere that can play fast, but also just has that good half-court structure with a lot of motion and pick and roll.
For just $8.33 a month, you can subscribe to TarHeelIllustrated.com. You can get all of Clint's written stuff, and he's on the message boards. And the only way you can access that stuff is to actually be a member of our community. For Clint Jackson, this is Andrew Jones. You've been listening to another THI Basketball Recruiting Podcast. Don't forget to click like on this if you like it. Subscribe to this channel so you get notifications every time we put something out. UNC football, UNC basketball, recruiting for both sports. We got a parade of stuff rolling out on a regular basis, even in the month of May. Thanks, my friend.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate you guys watching.
Absolutely. Thanks for stopping by.